All right, everyone. Good evening. Can we all hear me?
Good evening. I can hear you, sir, loud and
O-
clear.
Okay. Uh, Good evening, Adeola. What's up? How you doing? Okay. Yeah,
I
awesome.
can hear you.
Yeah, awesome. How's everyone doing? Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Just wanted to make sure that everyone could. All right. Nice. In the last class, we left off with um environment staging, and we put together a really simple environment. Okay, and hopefully some of you have started working with the assets pack and have already started putting your um, environments together already. Okay, so today we are going to start um, we're going to start programming. Okay, we're going to start coding today. I'm going to introduce us to programming. Okay, I'm going to introduce us to C sharp and the basics of programming before we jump right into programming for Unity. Um, okay, so before we start, I don't know if we have Visual Studio Code installed on our PCs, but in case we don't, let me just quickly show you how to get it. So Visual Studio, so you can go to their website, okay, code.visualstudio.com/download, and then download for your for your machine. If you're using Windows PC, just download for Windows. If you're using a Mac, download for Mac. Okay, so just make sure you have Visual Studio Code installed. And another thing I would advise for us to get started, for you to have installed, just in case, because I'm not sure whether or not everybody needs it, but I've noticed a few people end up needing it, and so that we don't have anyone, left behind when we get into stuff. Uh, be sure to download the .NET SDK. Okay, be sure to download the .NET SDK. So you can just go to Google and search for .NET Framework 7.0. Okay, that's the latest version 7.0, and then hit download. It's an SDK put together by Microsoft for C Sharp. Okay, so that's what we will be creating a console app from, and that's what Unity uses. The .NET framework, and then you can download either of these. But I'd advise you download x64, or just come here, see recommended downloads for the latest version of .NET. Uh, Click on that, and then download that. But I already have that downloaded, so I'm not going to allow this. So just remove that, and then okay. So, all right. Um, Immediately you download your .NET SDK, just install Visual Studio Code, and then install .NET. Okay, those are the two important softwares we'll be needing: the IDE, Visual Studio Code, and then the .NET Standard Development Kit. Okay, you might not necessarily need .NET, but just to be on the safe side, it's good to have .NET on your PC, installed on your PC. So we're not going to be using Unity. I think I already have a video on how to get the display controller for the assignment I gave, but you'll be getting all of that today I guess immediately after this class, you get all the assignments and every single thing you need to get the assignments done, the instructions and the necessary assets to work with the assignments. So we're not going to be using Unity today, so I'm going to close that. What we're going to be using is Visual Studio Code. Okay, so when you have Visual Studio Code installed, open it up and then just okay, before any of this, you can create a, just for organization's sake, create a folder where you would have all of this. Okay, you can go to your documents, your downloads, wherever. Just make sure you have a folder and then maybe call it Introduction to C Sharp. Okay, and then open up that and then let's create C Sharp pro C Sharp project. What is wrong with my spelling? C Sharp project. Okay. So okay, we have that open up. So just copy this directory and go back to Visual Studio Code, File at the top left corner, File, and then Open Folder. Okay, when you open the folder, just paste the directory over here, and then you would be, taken directly to that path, and then select folder. Visual Studio Code will open up, and then we will be able to work on a project within this folder. So to get started with Visual Studio Code, the first thing you need to understand that Visual Studio Code is a code editor. Okay, so you use Visual Studio Code to more or less type in your instruction. Okay, so you a program or a code, to be as simple as possible, is like a set of rules or set of programs, instructions, okay, that you give to a software, a system, for it to run. Okay, so Visual Studio Code is like your pen and paper where you write down these set of rules and instructions for the system to work on. Okay, so it's a code editor, it's a text editor, but it's more fancy and a whole lot more sophisticated than your conventional code editor. um, it won't be advisable to use something like Notepad. Okay, Notepad doesn't give you a bit of functionalities and some needed plugins, that you'll be needing to work with C Sharp. Okay, so we are going to jump right into stuff, and let's start with getting .NET set up for this project. I hope everyone is following along. Okay. All right. Who has a question? Okay, Adela, what's up?
Yes, please. Can you run me through the directory processing thing you did just now? How you said
Okay.
copy?
All
Yes.
right.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. So yeah. So after you're done creating the two folders, so you go to anywhere on your PC, all right, your documents, desktop, downloads, wherever you choose, create the introduction to C Sharp, okay, the folder. Then within that folder, create C Sharp project, another folder called C Sharp project, okay, and then open up that project. It's going to be empty, don't worry, we're going to fill it up very soon. And then you see there is a tab overhead your folder. Okay, click on that tab. It's going to automatically highlight the tab for you. Right click and copy, or just use Ctrl C to copy. All right. Okay, and then go to Visual Studio Code, and then on the top left corner there's a menu tab. Go to File, Open Folder, and then paste the folder on the overhead tab as before. Okay, go there, Control V, or you can just highlight everything, right click and paste. And then when you've done that, you can just select folder, and then it would open up in Visual Studio Code. Did you get that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, so the next step is setting up a very simple console app. Don't worry, it might not make any sense to you now, but as we move forward, I'll be explaining every single thing we are doing. So setting up a C# project, a console app C# project, is it's more or less like installing every single thing we need to run the project. So every project needs a set of plugins and components, properties that would help the project run properly. So you can, on your menu tab, go to Terminal, okay, and then click when the drop down when you see the drop down, click New Terminal. It will bring up this command prompt looking um, tab or window. Yeah, window is the word. Okay, so in that window, we're going to give it a simple command. Okay, we're going to tell it to import .NET into our project. Okay, you can see that the project is empty, and then if you go back to our file explorer, and then you see the C# project is empty. Okay, what we need to do now is import the necessary plugins and components that we would need to be running our code. Okay, so what you need to do is just write this simple line of code. Okay, this is I'll put it on the I'll put it on the chat. So that is .NET space new. We're building a console app to test our code. So we're going to write console, all right? And we're going to be using the .NET Framework version 7. Remember we installed version 7 not too long. So just do something like --framework net 7.0. So this simple line of code is just telling Visual Studio to import the plugins and components, for this project. So if we hit enter, it'll go through this, and then the template console app was created successfully, processing, and then it would do all of that for you, and restore succeeded. So if you notice here, we have been given a bunch of scripts that would help us run this project. Okay, so these are the properties and components that would help us with this project. And this program.c# is what we're going to be using to code in the instructions, to test how programming works, to test how code works, and so on and so forth. If you keep getting prompts like this, you can just ignore them for now, except it's telling you probably to maybe update Visual Studio Code, or maybe reinstall an extension or something. But aside that, you're good. So you can close up your terminal, and then we are in our very first C# script. Okay, so this is what a C# script sort of looks like, but for now it doesn't have every single thing that we'll be needing. As every programming language would start you off with, you would see the hello world. Okay, so Python would use print, while C# uses console.writeLine. Okay, for you to print anything on the console, you would need to use this, let me say this function, console.writeLine. Okay, so the console is what we call this. This is the console. Okay, this is the debug console. This is the terminal, is what we refer to as the console. Okay, so this is what we'll be using to test our code and make sure our code is functional. Okay, so this console.writeLine, all it's doing is telling our project or this program script to print hello world. So at the top right corner, you'd see a play button on Visual Studio Code. You see a play button, and if you hover on that button, you see run code. So let's click on run code and see what happens. So we're running the code, and then it would print out hello world. When you do this for the first time, sometimes this would come up, and then it would kind of trigger your antivirus if you're using Avast like I am. But don't worry, it's just trying to make sure, because what happens is you're running an executable when you do this. Okay, so it's just executing a code, and Avast does not recognize it, so it's just trying to make sure that, see, we didn't, just making sure that everything is good, so you can cancel that. But as we can see here, hello world has been printed out. Okay, hello world has been printed out. If I go in and change this to something else, something like hi, I am Pilgrim, and save, and then run that code, okay, it would give us a new result. You can see over there, hi, I am Pilgrim. So that is what that function does. Okay, it prints out results for us to make sure that our code is properly working. But we're not going to need it for now. Okay, we're not going to need it for now. Let me start us off with the different parts of programming. This is what is going to be. What I'm going to tell you now is something that is generalized, okay, across all programming languages. Okay, so these are like the building blocks of each programming language. Basically, all programming languages more or less have these on them. Okay, so they are called variables. Okay, so we're going to start off with variables. All right, so we're starting off with variables. Okay, so what are variables? Okay, variables are common data types in C# that is used to describe different components or properties in a class. Okay, so variables are like building blocks, like a set of properties that make up a class. All right, so I'm going to explain what a class is in just a minute. So okay, let me just give a brief explanation to what a class is and how variables work for classes. So let's say you have an object. Let's use a car, for example. Okay, a car is an object. Okay, and a class is an object is like it's an instance of a class. Okay, so let's say you have a car. So what makes up the car? Okay, there are different properties that make up a car. How fast can the car go? The car's speed. Okay, what is the name of the car? What type of vehicle is it? Is it convertible? Is it a sports car? Is it an SUV? Different types, different properties that you can use to define the car. So that is the same thing that you can use with variables. So variables are like the different minute properties that you can use to build up a class. Okay, so an object is an instance of a class, and then within that class you have properties that make up the class. Okay, so variables are like bits of information that build up a certain class. So the different types of variables we have, let's start with the one that we're already sort of introduced to. Let's start with a string. Okay, a string. Let's start with that. Okay, so we in C sharp we um we declare um we declare variables with a small letter. We start the variables with small letters. Okay, so these are keywords in C sharp. So keywords are the basic um, the basic components, the basic properties that C sharp uses. Okay, so you can see immediately I typed in string, C sharp highlighted it in blue or changed the color to blue, meaning it is a keyword. Okay, it's a keyword in C sharp. So C sharp recognizes string as a keyword. So I cannot call any other property the same thing. Okay, so when you declare a variable, you put in the variable type, in this case a string, and then you give the variable a name. All right, so let's say we want to get the let me see. Okay, let's say player, since we're creating games now, let's say player name. Okay, so a string called player name. Okay, and then when you're declaring a string, always make sure to give it a value. All right, so this value, so a string has to be written with quotes. Okay, a string contains a set of what's the word, letters, words, okay, that you would use to declare that string. Okay, so a string, this is what you use to declare a string. So you have to always remember to put your quotes, okay, when declaring a string. So let's say we want the player's name to be let's say Tayo. Okay, the player's name is Tayo. All right, so this is how you declare a string. Okay, put in the variable type. Okay, give the variable a name, and then the property itself. So we want to create a player's name. Okay, so this is variable player name. All right, and it's of type string, and then the contents or the property of that player name is Tayo. Okay, so string, player name, and what's the player name? Tayo. All right, so a property is, so the variable player name is called Tayo in this case. You can always change it to something else. Let's say Deborah, I don't know. So you can just give any name you want as long as it's in your quotes. Okay, so the next variable type we're going to be looking at is an integer. Okay, and you declare an integer in C sharp using the keyword int, int. So an integer is a whole number. Okay, an integer just describes like a whole number in C sharp. So okay, let's say, okay, since we have the player name, let's say so what whole number can a player have? Let's say player health. Okay, let's say player health. All right, so the player health can be what whatever whole number you can think of. So let's go with 100. You can either go with 10 or 100, but it has to be a whole number. Okay, if I start putting in different, if I start putting in like a decimal now, you see it's giving us an error. Okay, cannot implicitly convert type. So this is not the type that is recognized as an integer. When you're working with an integer, it has to be a whole number. Okay, see, it corrects that. Don't pay so much attention to this yellow warnings. This is just VS Code telling us that the we've not assigned the variable yet to anything. So the variable is not being called by anything. Very soon I will tell you what it means to call a variable, what to call a method, and so on and so forth like that. But for now, just follow along. So that is the variable type integer. Okay, so like I said, how you declare a variable, you type in the variable type with the keyword, in this case integer. Okay, integer, then the property name. So you can use let's use something else. Let's say what other whole number can you use? Let's say coins. Okay, so let's say in your game or project your player picks up coins. So coins, so coins, let's say your player starts with 5 coins. All right, so and then you assign the value. Yes, you assign the value of your variable. Okay, so your variable type, your variable name, and the value. So in the case of string, you have your variable type, your variable name, and then the value, which is the name of the player itself, which is in our case Deborah. Okay, so those are strings and integers. Another very interesting variable we're going to look at and that we're going to be working with, especially in Unity, is float. Okay, float. So that's the variable type and that's the keyword float. Okay, so a good example for a float is, let's say, height. Okay, so the height can be 7.5. But the thing is, when we're declaring floats, the value has to end with a small letter F in C sharp. Okay, because there are two. So what a float is, or in full, it's called a floating point, a floating point variable. But in C sharp, it's known as a float value, just a float. So a float is a it's a decimal. Okay, it's a decimal. Okay, so there are two types of decimals. Okay, the first type is a float and the other type is a double. Okay, so a double, you can also say maximum height, height, and then so for a double, you don't need to include the F at the end. Okay, you don't need to include the F at the end, so you can just have something like that. Okay, so now these are just supposed to be numbers. All right, so that is a double and this is a float. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to do that. I will explain why that happened in a bit very soon after I'm done explaining what we have here. All right, so yes, so this is a float and so this is a float and this is a double. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly go through why these are different. Okay, because at times you get confused on when to use a double and when to use a float. Okay, So as easily as I can explain, okay. So a float is more or less a small decimal value, okay, a small decimal value. Okay, when C sharp is compiling the code, okay, C sharp will recognize um C sharp will recognize a float as a 32 bit variable. Okay, it's going to recognize the it's going to recognize the variable that's decimal value. This decimal value is going to recognize it as a um 32 bit data. Okay, 32-bit data. I don't want to start going into like complex computer um lingo now, but I'm sure everybody understands what data is, like a representation of information and all that kind of thing. So um a float is recognized as a 32 bits, data point. Okay, while a double is larger. Okay, a double is larger, and then a double is like 32 times 32. So a double is like 32 plus 32, like twice of a float. So a double is bigger than the float, more or less. Okay, a double is a larger number than the float. Okay, so but most of the time we're not going to be using extremely large. So we're not going to be going all the way to this sort of values. Okay, we're not going to be using this type of decimal points. Okay, but if we are going to be extremely precise that the decimal points will go all the way to this much, maybe not this much, but like probably somewhere here or so, it depends on the precision. Okay, you would need that. Okay, like I said, if you read this, it represents a double precision floating point number. Okay, so it gives you the opportunity, or it gives you a window to be a whole lot more precise than a float. Okay, a float is just going to give you a single precision floating point number. Okay, so you can't be too crazy when you're using a float. Okay, but just know both of them represent decimal numbers. Okay, always be careful. C sharp is going to recognize a double as a larger number, a larger decimal number with more decimal places than it would a float. Okay, so when you're using a float, be sure to keep your float values as at least maybe 2 to 4 decimal places at best. But you can go as crazy as you want with doubles, but don't go too crazy, okay? So that you won't like break C sharp and trying to compile your code and understand what you have going on. Okay, so those are floats and doubles. Let's move on. Okay, so another very interesting variable that works in another variable that works in C sharp is what we call a Boolean. Okay, so a Boolean is just a true or false. Okay, you use a Boolean to kind of give a true or false statement. Okay, true or false statement. So let's say you want to know whether or not your player has something or is something. Okay, let's say you have two different options a player can be at best. Just two options a player can be. So let's say your player can be, let's use fast. Okay, so we want to know if the player is fast. So the best way to know whether a player is fast is to use a Boolean. Because if the player is not fast, then evidently the player is slow. Okay, so it's either the player is a fast player or a slow player. And in order for you to tell whether or not it's slow or fast, we can just set it to true. If the player is a fast player, the value for that boolean is going to be true. Okay, so a boolean represents a true or false value, full stop. Okay, a boolean represents a true or false value. So if you want to declare or to show us or show a property of a player or a class or an object, and you want to know whether that property is true or false, you use a boolean. Okay, use a boolean. You will notice something, that all these variables are colored the same with this this kind of blue color. They're just trying to show, this is C# or Visual Studio, depending on what code editor you're using. Just trying to show that these are keywords. These are keywords for variables. Okay, these are keywords for variables. A string is a variable, an integer is a variable, a float is a variable, double is a variable, and a boolean is a variable. And then this true is just setting us to know that, okay, it's a keyword, it's also a keyword, and we can either set it to true or false. Okay, so it can either be set, a boolean can either be set true or false. If I put a number here, it's going to give me a red, it's going to give me like an error, this red squiggly line telling you that, okay, you can't do this. So you can see you cannot implicitly convert a type integer to a boolean. We already set that, okay, this variable type is a boolean, so it has to either have true or false. Okay, so this is a string which contains a set of, let's say, characters. Okay, set of characters, comma, words, sentences. Okay, anything that has to do with words in general. Okay, sentences, phrases, clauses, whatever. All right, names of players, names of different things. So an integer is a whole number. Okay, this is me just going through everything so that we can know what they all are. A whole number. Okay, a float is a single precision floating point, or let's say a 32-bit decimal number, something like that. Okay, so always make sure when you're writing a float, to show that this is a float, always end it with an F. Okay, to show that, okay, this is a float. It's a decimal number, but it's a float. While a double is a double precision, no, I spell precision wrong there. Double precision floating point. Okay, or a 64-bit decimal number. Okay, so that's a double. And then a boolean is a true or false value. It's a variable type that returns a true or false value, as simple as possible. Okay, as simple as possible. So those are variables. Okay, those are variables. So variables are like common data types that you can use all throughout your class, all throughout your project. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is try to work with these variables quickly. Okay, we're going to try to work with these variables quickly. Okay, so this is when we are now going to use our the function we saw earlier, console.writeLine. Okay, console.writeLine. So this console.write line is just going to be giving us the results of what we're going to be doing from here on out. Okay, don't mind the IntelliSense on this stuff. I have a plugin, like an extension installed. Okay, so so far so good. Do we have any questions? Is everybody okay so far? Do we understand everything that I have talked about so far? Is everything clear?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Idris. Everyone else, okay.
I'm
Stefan,
also
all right.
I'm also I'm also good too because some of the things that you just said, I before prior to this training, before when the previous speaker, the previous when we started the Unity training for the first instructor.
Yeah.
So when we paused, I started with I started taking a course on C Sharp with W3 Schools. It's a free course. So majority of
Okay.
the things that you just Boolean, integers, arrays, etc. Sorry for the arrays part, but majority of the things that you just listed out or you just stopped now, I have already taken when I
Okay.
was taking the course, I was taking them. So I'm also on track
Uh,
likewise.
all right. All right. Awesome. I guess everyone is okay. No one has any questions so far. So let's continue. So, we're going to quickly work on operators, basic operations that we can do using these using these variables. Okay, using these variables, we're going to just quickly. Sorry, I'm going through my notes. All right, we're going to just quickly run through basic operations that we can do using these variables. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and then start something. Okay, so let me just say basic operations. All right, so yeah, if you need to comment anything that you don't want C Sharp or Visual Studio or Unity to take as anything, or you just want to try to give an explanation on what you're doing, maybe to your team member, or to just remind yourself of what this variable means, you can use comments. Okay, so this is a comment. All of these things highlighted, or all of these things in this weird green color, they're all called comments. So you can comment something out in C Sharp using double slash. Okay, this is a forward slash. So you can just you know, do a double slash. Okay, so that's, or you can do actually more than that, but if it has to be more than two. Okay, it has to be more than two. So just slash slash and then type your comments that, okay, this is an explanation for operators. Okay, so yeah, let's just move on. So we want to work on operators. So the first operator we're going to be working on is addition. Okay, so we're going to be working on addition. Okay, so addition. So let's quickly start with um, let's add two integers. So let's call the first integer a, okay, and then gives this integer a value of 5. Okay, always remember to close off your line with a semicolon. Okay, C sharp is a very sensitive language, so if you don't put a semicolon where it's supposed to be, it might not the code might not run, and then it will give you an error. So if I don't put that, you can see there's an error all the way to the end. Okay, so always make sure you close off your lines with a semicolon. And C sharp is also very case sensitive. Okay, very case sensitive. I'm going to explain that now. Okay, the way I wrote this player name, okay, the way I wrote this player name. So I started off with player and then name. Yeah, another thing about C sharp is you can't use spaces when giving um, a value, when giving a property name. Okay, I think someone has a question or something. Oh wow, time has gone so much. Oh, cool. Okay, so you can't use spaces when you are defining your variable types. Okay, so if I have string and I want to put player name, I can't do this player name. It won't recognize it. Okay, C# will not recognize it. So I have to use what you call camel casing. Okay, camel casing. You start your variable with a small letter, okay, and then you continue with the next word. So if it's a multiple word, if it's a compound word, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. If it's a compound word, you start the next word with a capital letter. Okay, no matter how many words make up the entire word. So player name. Okay, so player name. Player name. So if you want to do something like okay, let me look for a really big word. Something like WHO, World Health Organization. Every new word as part of that word would start with a capital letter. So the first word would be a small letter, world. The second one would start with a capital letter to tell C# that okay, this is a compound word and I just want to write something out of it. So World Health Organization. Okay, so this would be your world. This would be your variable. Okay, this would be our variable. So if the word continues, you have to start the next one. Okay, so let's say World Health Organization chief executive officer. So let's say we're trying to explain or tell people that this is the CEO of the World Health Organization. You can just do something like this, or you can just do something as simple as CEO. Okay, World Health Organization CEO. But also you can use an underscore to separate words. Okay, if this doesn't work very well for you, if you want to do something like WHO underscore CEO, that is a whole lot easier. Okay, very concise, very easy for you to understand. So instead of using spaces, you can use an underscore to represent a space when you are trying to define a variable. Okay, so anytime you're trying to define a variable, don't use space. But the value, if it's a string, the value can contain space. So if I want to, so let's take this out. Okay, if I want to give this name, so let's say this name is a compound name. Let's say we want to use the full name of the player, so I can use Deborah, female names. Okay, let's say Deborah Ayomide Johnson. Okay, let's use that. You see, we don't get any errors here because that is the value for the string. But I can't do the same thing for the string's definition itself. Okay, this is what is defining the string, so I can't do that for this. I can't do player. I can't do player full name like this. It's going to give me an error. Okay, there's going to be an error there. So if I do that, it corrects itself. Okay, as I said, ignore these yellow warning lines for now. We're going to figure that out in a bit. Okay, so that is how you work with string variable definitions. So let's go back to our operations. We're starting with addition. So the first variable we're going to be creating is an integer. We're going to work with an integer. Okay, so let's create another integer called b. Okay, and that integer, let's give it a value of 7. Okay, so we have these two values, a and b. If we want to add a and b, we're going to use the operator addition, the addition operator. And we can use the addition operator in two ways. Either we create a new integer, okay, and call that integer c, and that integer would now be a plus b. Okay, a plus b. If you notice, those yellow squiggly lines have disappeared. They were there before because we had not assigned the value, we had not assigned those variables to any value. Okay, we had not assigned that variable, they were not in use. Okay, so if I comment this out, you can see it comes back, and if we go to that, you can see that it's telling us the variable a is assigned but it's never used. So immediately we use that variable for something else, it corrects itself. Okay, now you're using that variable. All right, so a plus b is now, so c is now equals to a plus b. Okay, so this is one way to use your addition operation. Okay, now let's get the result of this. So we can use console.writeLine to print out results. Okay, you can print out a string, you can print out a float, a double, a boolean, whatever it is you want to print out, you can print that out using console.writeLine. So let's print out the result for this, but I'm just going to show you something simple. So let's do this, okay, quotes, and then say something, the sum is, and then space. So if you want to have multiple, if you want to print out multiple things, you can use the addition operator. That's another way you can use the addition operator. Okay, the addition operator can put two sets of variables together. Okay, you can use the addition operator to add two sets of variables. Aside variables that are of the same type, you can add up variables of different types. I'm going to show you how this is going to work. So this variable, so this sum is a string. Okay, we're not just assigning it to a particular variable yet. Okay, but this is a string. I'm going to add this string to this integer c. Okay, and save. All right, we save that, and then if we go ahead and run this, okay, it'll go through what we have and then give us a value. All right, so okay, we have these errors, but we can see the sum is 12. All right, the sum is 12. Okay, so that is the sum of a and b. 7 plus 5 is 12. Okay, so it gives us this, it will print out this result for us. The sum is 12. In order to avoid having all of these, we can just comment this entire thing. So you can select a couple and then control /. So if you want to comment multiple lines, you can just hold control and /, and then all of those lines will be commented out, okay, neatly for you. So if we go ahead and run this code again, okay, we won't have all of these showing up for us anymore. Okay, so it just gives us the sum is 12. Okay, instead of going through all of those things. This is just Unity, this is just Visual Studio warning us that we have some variables that have not been assigned. Okay, so I can get rid of this. Okay, so someone left. Do we have any questions? Or okay, I think we would be able to join the class back very soon so that we can continue. It looks like it's about to, the class is about to end. Okay, someone leave a chat. All right. Okay. All right, waiting to join in. Okay, just Adela here. Let's give about a minute to let every other person come in. Okay, I think everyone else is coming in. I guess not everybody saw the link on time. Okay. Alright, I guess we're all coming back in. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I do hope everybody comes in quickly so that we can continue from there. All right, so let's just quickly go through the operators so that we don't have to waste so much time. All right, so I'm going to clear out, don't worry, I'm just going to quickly put this together. So that we have everything ready. So int, let's say number 1 equals to 5, and then int number 2 equals to 10. All right, then we'll just go straight to all the different operations. So let's start with addition. Okay, so this addition is going to be number 1 plus number 2. Okay, so that is what that is going to be. Let's come all the way down here and make sure that console the right line, and then for addition, let's just say addition result. Okay, and then plus addition. Okay, so when we want to get the result for addition, it will just give us addition. Okay, so this is for addition. All right, so next thing we are going to be looking at is subtraction. Yes, I have a really good IntelliSense that has figured out. Okay, so yeah, so that is subtraction. Okay, so subtraction is, just subtracting. So this is the subtraction operator. Okay, so you have two integers. Okay, numbers 1 and 2. Okay, number 1 and 2, and then we can subtract them from each other. All right, and subtract them from each other. All right, so let's do this so that we can print out the subtraction value. Okay, so as before, let's do subtraction result. Okay, colon, and then plus subtraction. Okay, so when we run the code, we're going to get the results for addition and then for subtraction. So now we can quickly do addition, subtraction. Let's do multiplication. So multiplication. Okay, so multiplication, there's no actual multiplication sign as we have on our when we do mathematical equations, we do 1 times. So there's no like a times symbol on your keyboard. So what you use instead is an asterisk. So that's shift 8, okay? Shift 8 and then number 2. So that is multiplication. So multiplication is, number 1 multiplied by, which is this asterisk. Okay, multiplied by number 2. So it's going to give us the multiplication result of multiplying the product of 1 and 2. So let's do that. Console. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. But if you're understanding the way I'm taking it, then cool. We can cover up as much as possible. All right, so plus then multiplication, okay, and semicolon to make sure that that does not give us an error. Okay, so we have addition, subtraction, multiplication. Okay, and after multiplication, for crying out loud, we have division. Okay, so my intelligence has helped me out. So division is used by this forward slash. Okay, so we don't have a division key on our keyboard, so instead we use the forward slash. Okay, so we use this slash. All right, so this is the division. So this is number 1 divided by number 2. All right, number 1 divided by number 2. All right, so followed by let's use it's almost like it's reading my mind. Okay, so if we want to find the modulo, I was going to go for modulo. Okay, so for those who have for those of us who have worked with um mathematics for a while, for those of us who study maths, probably you're in physics or finished from physics, engineering, maybe did any course that involved a whole lot of mathematics, you would remember using modulus, okay, or a modulo, where you can get the remainder value of dividing through two numbers. So the modular value or remainder, I'm going to use modulo here because that's what I have in my notes, modulo. So this is going to be modulo. Okay, but yeah, it's also it's also for remainder. It's used to getting the remainder of dividing two numbers. So let's say we have 7 divided by 5. So 5 can only go in 7 once, but it will give you a remainder of 2. So what this modulo does is it gives you the result as the remainder. So instead of giving you a decimal like 1.2 something, okay, 1.25 or something, it's going to give you the remainder itself, okay, of the division operation. So the modulo sign or the operator is the percentage key. Okay, so the percentage key is shift 5. So that's what you would need to get the remainder of that's what you need to get the remainder of a division operator. Okay, so that's what we use as modulo or remainder. So let's print out this. So console the right line. Okay, and then we didn't include for division, so let's do that now. Division result. Okay, division result, so plus division, okay, semicolon, and then do the same thing for our modulo, but let's use remainder. Okay, let's use remainder results in this case, since we're trying to get the remainder of those values. So let's just say modulo, or should I just change it to, okay, let me just change it to that. Okay, so I can just, so okay, quick tip, you can change a value. Okay, you can change the description of a variable by holding Alt and then clicking on the two or more instances of that value. So I can just do remain that. Okay, so it will change that. But if you have like maybe you've written 100 lines of code or 500 to 1,000 lines of code and you can't go through each and every one of them, you can just use control. You can select what you're trying to change and just hit Control F. It will bring out this tab. Okay, and then there's an arrow to the left side. Just toggle that arrow and then you can see it gives you the chance, or it gives you a window to replace that variable description. Okay, so let's say, okay, let's go back a bit. Okay, so let's say we had this modulo and then we wanted to change it, so just hit Control F and then it selects that, and then we can replace it with remain down. Okay, so you can do one of two things: either just replace that one, or if you want to replace every instance of the remainder, Ctrl Z, if you want to replace every instance of modulo in your entire script, you can just hit replace all. Okay, replace all. Be careful, it's going to do the same thing for whatever you have in your comments. So you might just have to go back to the comments and then correct that. But that would help you to go through your entire script and then correct the mistake you made when you were maybe trying to name something. Okay, so I guess everybody understands that. So let's run this code. So what we're expecting is to get the result of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and finding the remainder between these two integers, number 1 and number 2. So let's cancel that for now and then hit run. Okay, so it's going to go through the entire code and then give us the results. So it's compile for a bit and then give us the results. All right, so we have the results. So addition results 15, subtraction results -5, multiplication results 50, division results 0, remainder results 5. If we go back and check, 5 plus 10 actually equals 15. Okay, so we use number 1 minus number 2, which is number 1 is 5, while number 2 is 10. So number 1 is less than number 2. Okay, so that would give us a negative number. All right, so that's -5, which we got here, and we multiplied 5 and 10, which gives us 50. Very good. And then the division between number 1 and number 2 is 0. All right, so 5, okay, yeah, this is an integer. Okay, an integer can only return a whole number. All right, can only return a whole number, but in actuality this is supposed to give us 0.5 or half. Okay, 5 over 10 is 0.5, which is half. But because this is an integer, it won't give us in decimal place. Integers only give their results in whole numbers. Okay, but if we were to change this, let's do that for the sake of this so that we can see what I'm talking about. If we were to change this to a float, okay, if we were to change this to a float, but be careful though, okay, because sometimes this might not give you the answer as a float, but this should work. Okay, we're not getting any errors, so this should work. Oh, sorry. We're supposed to do that for the division. Yeah, so this should work. Okay, so if we run that code now, we're going to get the division results as a decimal. Okay, because 5 divided by 10 is 0.5. Okay, It's still okay, giving us 0. Why is that? Okay, these are both integers. All right. Yeah, these are integer values. It won't work right off the bat. We have to parse as a float. Yeah. So we have two integers. Okay, we have two integers here. So we can't just convert straight to an integer from there. We would have to, pass this as a float value, and we can do that using this. So we can just pass this as a float. Okay, and then if we run that, will this give us, nah, it might not still give us the results we're looking for, because these are still integers. But we'll come to that very soon. I'm going to explain how we can get the values we need. It's still going to give us that. Wait, these are not these are always going to be whole numbers, so that won't work, except we like convert these to floats and then do the operation. So at the back of your mind, if you know you're going to be getting decimal points, or if you expect decimal points, always make sure your values are in floats or doubles, depending on the size of your decimals. Okay, so let them be in floats or doubles if you are expecting your results in a decimal. Okay, so if I just use floats now, and then let me say float 1. Okay, so be careful with how you name float, then float 2, and then let's make that 10, and then our multiplication is okay, see that error, I'm not supposed to separate them, they're supposed to be together. Okay, so division would be a float value 2 if we want it to work, and we can't use numbers because numbers are both integers, so we have to use float values. So float 1 divided by float 2 if we want it to work. Okay, so these would give us the right result now. So division is now a float variable. Okay, so if we run that code, we should have a result, and then it give us the result in decimal. So we're going to, oh, that's taking a while. Why is this taking a bit? All right, so we can see the division result is now, let me bring this up here. Yeah, the division result is now a decimal because we declared the variables as a float. Okay, if we're declaring it as an integer, it won't work. It won't give us a decimal result back. Okay, so that's how that works. All right, so now that we've seen how floats and integers work, and we've seen basic operations. Okay, let's look at comparisons. Okay, let's look at comparisons. So comments, comparisons. This is comparisons. So as the names suggest, comparison operators, they are used to compare two values. Okay, if you want to compare two values, and what do I mean by comparing two values? Are the values equal to each other? Are they not equal to each other? Is one less than is one less than the other? Is one greater than the other one? Is it greater than or equals to? Is it less than or equals to? These comparison operators are what would help us figure that out. So we're still going to be using these number 1, number 2, and float 1, float 2, so that we won't have so much issues. So when you're using comparisons, it gives you a true or false result. Okay, when you're dealing with comparisons, they give you a true or false result. Okay, so can someone tell me what variable type we're going to be using for checking comparisons? What variable types are we going to be using? What variable type checks true or false?
Boolean.
Okay, yeah.
Boolean.
Exactly, a boolean. A boolean is what we need to check for comparisons, whether it returns a true or false value. Okay, so we want to see how these integers compare to each other. So we're going to use a boolean. Okay, so we're going to use a boolean. Let's check first if they are equal. Okay, let's check if they are equal. So if they're equal, so to check if two numbers are equal or two values are equals to each other, we use the operator equals to equals to. So this operator here is an operator to check if the values are equal. Okay, so that's number 2. So what this is just saying is number 1 equals to number 2? Give the result back to is equal. Okay, so is equal is going to be number 1 compared with number 2. Are these equal? And then it will give us either true or false. Okay, so this is an equality check. Okay, this is an equality check. So another thing we can check for is, are they not equal? This is kind of pissing me off, the fact that it's getting my coding pattern. Okay, yeah. So is not equal. So should I just disable it for now? Let's see. I can check that out later. Okay, so sorry about that. I have this really crazy autocomplete that I use while working so that I don't have to type out everything at once. So, all right. So this boolean is checking if the player if both variables are not equal, and you can do that by using the not equals to operator. And to get the not equals to operator, you use the exclamation mark that shift 1 and then equals to. This symbolizes not equal. So anywhere you see, if you're going through a class or you're going through someone else's code and you see not equal, like this exclamation mark and then equals to, they're just trying to find out if this is not equals to this. Okay, so that is what you use as an inequality check. So the first one is to check if they're both equal, that's equals to, and the second one is to check if they are not equals to each other, that's exclamation mark equals to. So those are the operators. So the other operator we're going to be looking at is less than. Notice how I typed it. Every word following it is in capital letter. So is less than. So to check if something is less than, you use your, okay, so number 1 is less than number 2. Okay, number 1 is less than number 2. So you have this, I can't remember what this character is called, but you can find this character, I think left facing arrow, I'm not sure if that's what's called, but this character is less than operator. Okay, so this character is, we're going to use this character for our less than check. Okay, so it's the character, it's the right facing arrow key, I guess, not the arrow key itself. There's a less than key on your computer, on your keyboard. Okay, so that's the key you're going to use for the is less than check. And then after that, we're going to be checking is greater is greater than. Okay, is greater than. So is greater than, you just find the is greater than, so that's shift full stop. Okay, for is greater than, shift full stop, then semicolon, meaning is less than is shift comma. So the comma key is shift comma key is your is less than key. That's the operator for is less than. So this operator is for our greater than check. Okay, and then another thing, okay, I mentioned something else, is less than or equals to. So you can do Boolean is less than or equals to. I guess I'm going to, let me just make it small. It's less than or equal. Yeah, that makes sense. So is less than or equal is as simple as the others. So you're just going to do the normal less than is less than and then equal. Does that make sense? Is less than or equal. So this is going to check if the variables are equals to each other, if they are less than or equals to each other. If any of the conditions are met, it's going to return true. If none of the conditions are met, it's going to return false. Okay, so you're checking for two conditions. Is it less than? If it's not less than, check, is it equals to? If it's not equals to, then return false. So it has to be either less than or equals to before it returns a true value. Okay, so that's 2, and then that is less than or equals to. Check. Okay, we're all good. And then Boolean is greater than or equal. So this helps us check if it's greater than or equal. So this one we can do the greater than sign and then equal. As easy as that. And then semicolon to close that off. And then that is our less than or equals to check. Okay, so this just as the less than, it checks, is this value greater than this value? If it's not, is this value equals to this value? If it's not, then return false. So it's either going to be greater than or equals to before it can return a true value. All right, so now in order to do that, in order to test this out, we are going to do something really simple. So let's just copy these for now so that we won't waste time, and paste and then change the values. So let's say this will be is equal result, and then the result we're looking for is equal. Okay, and then is not equal result, and then we're passing in the is not equal result, and then we need is less than result. Okay, and then that is less than. I will come to the chat now. Let me finish this up quickly. Less, okay, is greater than result, and then that is greater than. So those would give us the results we're looking for. And then is less than or equal. Okay, and then pass that in, is less than or equal. Okay, let's just copy this entire line. Copy, paste, and then we do is greater than or equal. So the only thing we need to change is this is greater than or equal. All right. Does anyone have a question? Or are we all good? Do we all understand so far where we are currently?
Yes, I do.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. That is cool. That is good. Okay. So yeah, let's get rid of this and then print out a new badge. So this badge is going to give us all of the results that we have gotten so far. Okay, it's going through the code and then checking to make sure everything makes sense. All right, so let me expand this. So it did the basic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication. So let's check the conditionals. Okay, let's check these. Let's check the comparisons. So 5 and 10, are they equal? No, they are not. Okay, so they are not equal, so that's false. So it gave us the correct result. So are they not equal? True, meaning they are not equal, so it will give us a true result. So it will give us true. Is 5 less than? So if you go back here, so less than is that's 5. Number 1 is 5, less than number 2. Is number 5 less than number 10? Yes, which will give us true. And then is greater than would give us is number 5 greater than number 2. It's quite I keep saying that. Is number 5 greater than number 10? Okay, let me just go here. Is number 5 greater than number 10? Okay, no, it is not, so it gives us a value of false. Is number 5 less than or equals to 10? It is less than 10, so it will give us true. Okay, it is less than 10, so it will give us true. All right, so finally, is number 5 greater than number 10? It is not, and it is not equals to number 10, so it will return false. So that is how we compare two values. Okay, that's how we compare two values using these operators. Okay, so I'm going to send us this script to go through later so that we can understand how everything works. Okay, maybe I'll put it in a text and send it over. You can try out different things, change up these values and see what results you get. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's look at something different. Okay, let's look at conditional statements. So we've learned about I think that's where we'll be stopping. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, I think we should stop at conditional statements and then continue with that from the next class. Continue with methods and functions, classes, and then algorithms, arrays, and the likes from the next class. Okay, so let's look at conditional statements. Okay, so what are conditional statements? Okay, so let's say you want to confirm something. Okay, let's say you want to confirm something before doing a particular before giving a particular result. I have to confirm that this result meets a specific condition. Okay, so does this result meet a specific condition? If it does, do this, do this, do this. Remember I told you when we started off that programming is like giving a system a set of instructions in order to follow to give a set of results. Okay, so most of what you're going to be doing will be setting conditions within methods within a class in order to make sure it does this or does that or does this. Okay, so these conditional statements are as follows. Okay, so the first conditional statement we're going to be looking at is the if statement. If, if. Okay, so if this is met, then do this. Okay, so that conditional statement is written like this: if, okay, then space, in the brackets, set your condition. Remember, we just looked at comparisons. Okay, we just looked at comparisons. So when you are comparing something, you would use, when you're trying to check a condition, you would use the comparison operators a whole lot. Okay, so you're checking, is this value equals to this value? If the answer is true, if it gives us true, then go on and do the next thing. Okay, so this is written like this. So let's say before we give a result, so I'm going to comment this out so that we don't get this. I'm going to comment all of this out so that we don't get a result for this. We're just going to check to make sure that our if statement is working. So now we want to see if number 1 and number 2 are equal. Okay, so if number 1 is equals to number 2, then use these curly braces. So you would see these square braces right. Okay, so on the top side of your keyboard where you have QWERTY, at the very far end of that is the key P, or the letter P. At the side of that you would see square brackets. These are square brackets. These, you see your square brackets. So in order to get these, what you need to do is hold shift and hit your square brackets. Okay, hold shift and hit your square brackets. But in order to have this properly arranged, just put it somewhere down here like this. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Come down, square brackets, and hit enter to properly arrange your if statement for you. This is how you write an if statement. Okay, this is how you write an if statement. Okay, and then after this condition has been met, okay, after this condition has been met, you can now put in whatever you want the results to be. So let's see if this is true. Okay, console dot write line. Okay, let me just do this instead of having to stress myself. Let me copy this and then copy and paste. But this time we're going to say something like to confirm now that, okay, result is equal, because if it's not equal it won't run. So it makes no sense to just do that. So if number 1 is equals to number 2, give us this result. If it's not equals to that, it won't give us that result. Okay, so now let's do another one. Let's do if number 1 is not equals to number 2. Do you see there's a difference now? The first if statement, we're checking if both values were equal. If it's equal, print this out. Now we're checking, are they not equal? If number 1 is not equals to number 2, then go ahead and tell me that it is not equal. So result, okay, result is not equal. All right, so result is not equal. So clear this out and let's see which of them would give us a result. I know we already know which would give us a result, judging from how the numbers are structured, or the values of the numbers. So only one will give us a result. So you can see the only result we get here in the console or in the terminal is result is not equal, because the only condition that was met is number 1 is not equals to number 2. So 5 is not equals to 2, so it will give a result. This is not true. Number 1 is not equals to 2, so this would not be printed. Okay, this is not going to be printed because this condition was not met. So a conditional statement would only give a result when the condition that has been stated, okay, is met. So that's why it's called a conditional statement. You state a condition. If the condition is met, then it would run whatever results or whatever script you have within the conditional statement. All right, so let's do something else. Let's check if number 2 is greater than number 1. So number 2, let's put our comparison, let's compare them, is greater than number 1. And then this time we'll change the result to result is greater. So if this result is met, if this condition is met, that means number 2 is greater than number 1. It will print this out. If it's not met, it won't print anything out. Okay, so let's try this out. Quickly, so that we can go to the next. So you see, it is met. Number 2 is greater than number 1, so result is greater. Okay, and this other condition was also met, saying number 1 is less than number 2. That's why both results were printed out. But let's say we have multiple of these. Are we just going to be writing if and if and if and if and if? Which leads us to our second statement. Okay, our second statement. So I'll just say comma, else if. All right, else if. So what does else if do? What does this do? So let's say your very first condition, your if statement, is not true, and you don't know if it wasn't true. Let's say we don't know if it's not true. How do we now get results? Because nothing will be printed out if it's not true. How then do we get the results? Okay, so we can get the results by using the else if. Okay, the else if statement. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's go back to what we had earlier. Number 1 equals to number 2. Okay, so and then get rid of this. We already know how to call an if statement. Now let's see how else if statements work. So we checked if number 1 equals number 2, which we know is not true, but let's assume we don't know. So if this is not met, we can check another condition. So if number 1 if number 1 is equals to number 2, write result is equal. Else if number 1 is not equals to number 2, then do this. Console the right line. Okay, and then say result is not equal. That way we can go through a bunch of conditions. Okay, we can go through a bunch of, let's say we had more conditions, and then else if, so you can just keep going. write the condition and then going, until every condition you have in mind, okay, for that for those variables are met, for those values are met. Okay, so this time we're only going to get one result. So if the first check if this condition is met. If it's not met, it will go to the second condition. Okay, it's go to the second condition and then check, is this condition met? And then it will print this. Okay, so let's try that out. There we go. It prints out result is not equal. Okay, because the second condition, the else if statement, was met. The if statement, the original if statement was not met, but the else if statement was met. But let's say you've gone through all of these statements, but for some reason it doesn't give you a result. It doesn't give you a result. Let's create a scenario where that happens. Okay, let's say okay, so let's do this. We know that number 1 is not greater than number 2. Okay, so we're going to use, so let's say equals to, all right, and then the second condition that we'll check for is number 1 greater than number 2, which is not going to work. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, we're going to do result is greater than, yeah, so result greater than. But let's run this. We would see that we're not going to get any results because number 1 is not greater than number 2 and number 1 is not equals to number 2. So you see, nothing comes out. So as a programmer, how do you figure out what to do next? Okay, how do you know what result you would be looking for? So if you go through your if statements, your else if statements, and for some reason it's not giving any result, but you want to see something, you want to get the result, you can use the final conditional statement called else, just else. Okay, so else is more or less telling us if every other thing we've done, if every other condition we've put is not met, then do this. If it's not equals to the number, if it's not greater than the number, if it's not less than the number, if it's not this, if it's not that, if none of the conditions are met, then do this. And we can declare, we can put the else statement, just else, and then brackets. Because we're not setting any specific condition, we're just trying to tell the program that if all of the other conditions have not been met, just give us a result. Okay, do this. And then what we wanted to do is tell us something, at least just give us a result. We want to be able to see something. All right. And then probably we want to see null condition, or let's say conditions were not met, or results invalid. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Results invalid. So we've gone through all of the conditions and then the result meets none of the conditions. So it's safe to say that the result is inconclusive, the result is not valid. But at least we get a feedback, we get a sort of result. Okay, so if we run this, the first condition is not met, so we're not going to get any results from there. Second is not met, but the third will be met, and then you can see in our console, results invalid. So if we have a bunch of conditions, a bunch of if statements, else if statements, and then none of them are giving us any results, we can always count on the else statement to give us something. Okay? So those are conditional statements. If, else, and else if. Yes, if, else if, and else. All right, so let's do, okay, while we still have time, let's play around with Okay, we have less than 5 minutes now. Let's play around with what we have. So another way for us to use conditional statements, let's comment this out and then create something new from here. So let's say we want to do a sort of login, want players to log into a system, okay? And then we pass in, you know how you can like type in the player's name and all, you pass in a player's name. So yeah, let's say player name, let's say player name. Let's say just say player name, okay? So player name equals to, I don't know any names, no names coming to my head. Let's say Michael, okay? All right, so let's say Michael is the name of our player, okay? And let's say Michael's, it's already, okay? So we have less than a few minutes, okay? So let's say Michael's name, okay? So yeah, let's say Michael, and let's get an integer of Michael's height, okay? Let's just say these are the parameters, or no, let's use a pin since we're checking for a login. A pin, and let's say Michael's pin is the easy1234. Okay, so 1234 is Michael's pin, and let's check for another string, and then the string is, I don't know, his email. Let's use an email. Okay, email, and then the email is a string, so the value you'll be doing is, let's say, michael@gmail.com. All right, so these are Michael's details. Okay, so now we want to check if Michael meets all these details. Okay, so we can compare strings, okay, using if statements, is using the conditional statements. So the first thing we want to do is check, is the name correct? Okay, so let's do something. Let's check the name. So if player name equals to, let's say, let's first check. Let's say the player we need to put in is not Michael. Okay, let's say the player's name is Veronica. Yeah, Veronica. This is the player we're looking for. Okay, by the time we start working with arrays and then loops, for loops and while loops, this would make more sense to you. Okay, we're going to do something really interesting with loops, and then we'll test this login system again when we have more data. Okay, so if the player's name is equals to Veronica, we want to print out console or write line hi, or let's say welcome Veronica. Okay, let's say that. Okay, else if player name equals to Michael, then we want it to say console.writeLine welcome Michael. Although your login system is way much complicated than this. Okay, and then else if it's not Veronica or it's not Michael, then we want it to just say something like let's do something like a robot. Okay, let's say system does not recognize user. Let's just do something like that. Okay, system does not recognize user. Okay, so that is going to be for our player name. Now let's check for the so this is going to be for check player check player name. Okay, so now we're going to do for check pin. Okay, so check pin. In a much more complex system, you would do a sort of algorithm that would go through a loop, an array of different saved players, their pins, their emails, and then check the conditions. Are the conditions met? Are they true? And then we can now move on from there. Okay, check pin. So yeah, check pin. So pin is the pin equals to 0000. First off, if the pin is equals to 000, so let's say all players are supposed to use the same pin to log in. Okay, so if it's 000 and 000 is not the pin, so you can just say invalid pin. Okay, and then else if pin is equals to 1234, okay, console dot write line and then pin verified. Okay, pin verified, and then else if it's not that, we can still go back and say, okay, if it's none of those, okay, I think I should just do something like this. Let's say this 000 is the default pin, and then Michael changes his pin to 1234. Okay, every player gets 0000, and then he hasn't changed his pin, so we can say default pin recognized, please change pin. Just tell the player, okay, you're still using the default pin, please change your pin. Okay, write line and then invalid pin. So this would be invalid pin if none of the conditions are met. All right, I don't think we'd be using the email for now, so let's just do that to save time. So we're going to run this and check. Okay, we're going to run this and check. We already know what the results would be, but I just want us to see how all of these work. Okay, we're going to run this and it'll give us a result. So we will have welcome Michael, pin verified. Okay, so it gave us our expected results. Welcome Michael, pin verified. So the conditions for Michael signing into the system were met. But let's do something interesting. Let's check for both the player name and the pin together before Michael can be verified. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so let's copy this, and then for now just comment that out and then say verify player identity, in bracket, let's say with name and pin. Okay, so now let's do that. Paste this. So we can do what you call a logical operation. Okay, a logical operation. So logical operation is like and, or, is not, logical not. So this is and. So the and button is this and this. Check if this condition and this other condition are true. So if the player's name is Veronica and the pin equals to 0000. So welcome Veronica. You can say welcome Veronica and then space, and just add something like so please update pin. So we're going to be doing a bunch of conditions now. Okay, please update pin. All right, so this means Veronica is still using the default pin. Okay, so copy that and then paste, but this is supposed to be and else if. Okay, so if Veronica has updated her pin to 1234, we don't need to tell her to update. So this would be pin verified. Okay, and then now we do the same thing for Michael. Else pin. Okay, if Michael is still using the default pin, we're just going to tell Michael to verify. Okay, to update his pin, sorry. All right. Okay, the call is about to end, so okay, so I guess we can join in with the last and then round up from there. Okay. All right. Where am I? What is it? Okay, there we are. Okay, so here we go. These have not been updated. Okay. So this is updated as okay, so let's just use this. This is going to be stressful. JSI dash CTXP dash JKH. Okay, all right. I guess we got a wrong account. Okay. And yeah, we should be able to join in now. Why? Oh, okay, sorry. JSI. Call has ended. Why? Okay. Oh, okay. The class was updated already. Okay, so that's slash CWG dash HTTP dash. Oh, why does it keep doing this? Alright, that took a bit to figure out, but I guess we're good. For those that be watching the recording, sorry. Okay, we're just going to wrap up from here, and then okay, so yeah, from the next class we'll be looking at arrays and loops, and then we'll be able to visualize this login system that we're working with much properly. Okay, all right, so okay, so we're checking if Michael has the old pin, and then if he does, update the pin. Okay, so yeah, and then one final So check if Michael has the right pin, and then if he does, pin verified. All right, nice. I think our system looks good, properly arranged. Okay, make sure nothing else prints. All right, so we've written over 100 lines of code. That's nice. Okay, awesome. So we have Michael, and the pin is 1234. So we are going to be getting this. Welcome, Michael, pin verified. So we've confirmed that this player is Michael. Okay, this player is Michael, and Michael's pin has been verified. Okay, so what if this wasn't Michael? Okay, let's go to Michael. Let's go explain it. What if this wasn't Michael? Okay, what if this was actually Veronica? Okay, what if this was actually Veronica? And what if Veronica had not changed her password or her PIN? Okay, what happens then? So let's run that and see. Okay, let's bring this up here. And then it should give us a result. You see, this time it tells us, welcome Veronica, please update PIN. So Veronica's PIN is not updated, and our small conditional system is prompting Veronica to update her PIN because she's still using the default PIN. But what if it's Veronica and then for some reason she is not she doesn't use either of the passwords. Yeah, let's say she uses 4589. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, did we meet that condition? 4589. So Veronica and 4589. See, system does not recognize user. So our conditional system works. Okay, this simple conditional system we've created works. Okay, the system does not recognize the user because the player name is registered as Veronica, but the player is not using the right PIN. Okay, so it meets none of these previous conditions. Okay, it meets none of these previous conditions. What if we change the name to, Michael? Does that help? So let's try it again. Does that help? Okay, it doesn't help because the password, the PIN, why do I keep saying password? The PIN doesn't, the system doesn't recognize the PIN. The PIN has to be either 0000 or 1234 for it to be valid, for the PIN to be verified. So since the PIN is not verified, then the condition is not met. Okay, let's say we put the right PIN here, 1234, and then for some reason we don't use either Veronica or Michael. Let's say we use I don't know, let's use my name, Daniel. Okay, so if I went there, I got the PIN from Michael, and then Michael tells me, oh, everybody has the PIN, you can just go in and use the PIN. But I was not smart enough to remember that I'm not even registered on the system. The only people who can access the system are the people who are registered. And so far so good, we only have Veronica and Michael registered on the system. Those are the only people it's checking for. So if I go to the system and I put my name, Daniel, and run the system, let's see what it gives us. See, system does not recognize user. So for the condition to be met, for the system to recognize us as a user, we have to have the correct name and the correct PIN. So both conditions, the player name and the PIN, must be true. So that's how you work with conditional statements. By the time let's try some. I think since we still have time, let me I would explain this properly in the next class, but just so we understand what I am trying to do here, okay, I'm going to create an array. Okay, I'm going to create an array of so let me just quickly do that here. Okay, and then in the next class we're going to work properly on it. Let's create a string, and to create an array, I'm going to look at this in the next class, but just to create an array we use square brackets. Okay, so remember the square brackets I told you about? Immediately after the P key on your keyboard, you hit that key, it gives you the square bracket. It just goes to show that this is an array. Okay, so this is an array of strings. So an array is like multiple values of the same type, of the same variable type. So if I need to have 100 names, if I need to have 100 names in the system, I can create an array of 100 names. Okay, so let's create player name. Okay, so we'll check for player name, and in order to properly do that, let's do new string. So we're creating a new string of arrays. Okay, a new string of arrays. I think player name. Okay, yeah. So I need to switch this off, or let me just say player names. Okay, player names. All right, so let's say our first player, as we used before, was Michael. The first player that's been registered is Michael. The second player registered is Veronica. The third player registered is Ali. The fourth player registered is, let's just go with Tunde. All right, and then let's have 5 players. Let's have one more female name here. Let's say Precious. All right. Okay, so we have 5 players registered, and then we have, let's have 5 pins also registered. Don't worry, you don't need to understand everything I'm doing right now. We would go in depth in the next class. So let's have 5 pins. Okay, so the pin 1 can be, let's say Michael doesn't change his pin. Let's say Michael's pin is still the default pin 0000. Veronica has changed her pin. Veronica's pin is 1, 2, 3, 4. Ali's pin, Ali doesn't also change his pin because maybe he's lazy or something. That's 000. Tunde is a good boy, so he changes his pin. So 7878. And then finally Precious also changes her pin, and then her pin is, let's go with 9877. Let's do something like that. Okay, so now we have the database. Okay, we have the player names, and then we have the pins. Okay, we have the player names, and then we have the pins. Now we have to check for the individual players that are trying to get into the system. Okay, now we will check for a single player name this time. Okay, this is the player who's trying to access the system. Okay, and then a single pin this time. Okay, a single pin this time, because this is the pin that particular player would put in to try to access the system we've created. Okay, let's make this empty, and let's make this, just 0, I guess. And then now let's just do a for loop. I'm going to explain what a for loop is very soon. Okay, so a for loop, let's just create a for loop. I'm going to explain all of this later, but just to demonstrate the if statements for the system that we worked on. So for all the players, player names, the length. Okay, so this is just going to go through all the players that we have. So what it's going to do is go through all of these players. Okay, so the for loop more or less does this thing. It's like checking through a list of data. So the data we're checking through now is the player names. Okay, since the player names, the number of players, the number of registered player names is equals to the number of registered pins. We're just going to go through the player names.length. This player name.length means how many players do we have within this array. Okay, so this is just going to give us back the total number of players within this array. All right, so now let's use our if statement. If our player name, which is this player name, we're going to compare. If our player name is equals to when you're doing conditions equals to checking if they're equal, okay, conditional statements, okay. If it's equals to any of the names, now you can see there's a difference. This is player name. Okay, let me just call this registered players so that we'll see the difference. Registered players. You can always change. Okay, so let's do that shortcut that I talked about earlier. Okay, let's just do this. Shift and then registered players. Okay, so change that and then everything is automatically updated. So registered players. So registered players, that particular player. So don't worry, I would explain this properly. So if the name equals to this and then the pin, okay, let me say registered pins, since we've not changed this, we've not used this yet. Registered pins. Okay, so if the pin is equals to the registered pins, at least one of the registered pins. So this I, what it's doing is checking for the position. So it starts with 0. When you're creating an array ID starts from 0. So you count the first value is 0, the second value is 1, third is 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, the last value is going to be the length of the array. That means how many variables are in that array minus 1. So the array length minus 1. Don't mind me, I'm rushing, but I want us to finish up on time so that by the time we come to the next class, we'll just kick off from wherever we stop today. Okay, my IntelliSense has gotten what I want to do. So yeah, so welcome player name plus pin verified. Okay, so we have the player name, whatever player name we put here, and then if the pin is correct, if the pin matches one of the pins, then the pin is verified. Okay, but we have to check. Okay, we have to check. Is the pin a 0000 pin? We have to check first. So let's not do this. Let's do 0000. Okay. Then the next one we'll check if it's actually a verified pin. Okay. If it's actually a verified pin. So for now we're just going to say, please update pin. So if the pin is 000, if it's still 000, please update pin. And then else if, okay, if it's a registered name, if it's registered, so registered player name, registered players, and it's also a registered pin. So if the pin is also a registered pin or one of the registered pins, then you can do the registered pin thingy. So paste, this time it's to be pin verified. Okay, so now that means the pin is verified this time. Okay, is verified. Okay, so yeah, and then else. So if it's not if it doesn't meet any of that, we can just go back and use system does not recognize user. Okay, so you see this has reduced the number of lines we from this to something a bit smaller, so we don't have to do checking and checking and checking and checking again over and over again. Okay, so yeah, what we can do is if that's already been met, don't go to the next one. If the first one has been met, don't go to the next one. So we can do that by breaking out of the loop. I will explain all of that very soon. Breaking out of the loop just means, you know what, stop here, don't do any other thing, and just move forward. If the condition was met and we did it, and the condition was met within a loop, just break the loop and stop the system immediately, because the condition has been met, the player has access, then the player can start. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing when we break, because normally it will still go to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, which is sort of pointless, and then it's just going to be wasting our time, even though we're not going to see the computation time. So now, what player should we start with? What player should we try this with? Anybody? Give me a player. Give me a name, a registered name or not registered, so that we can try it out. Let's get 3 names from us. Guys. What? I didn't get that name.
Ali.
Ali. Okay, awesome. Let's try out Ali. And should we use Ali's actual password, or should we change the password, or how should we go about it? So, Ali. What?
Actual password.
The actual password. So Ali's password is 0000, because he did not update his password. So let's try this out and see what results we would get. Let's cancel this first and then try it again with an empty console. Okay, so it's running and we're waiting for the results. Okay, system does not recognize user, Ali. Okay. Oh yeah, true. It's going through all of the users. Okay. So the first user does not meet. Okay. So Ali is not equals to the first user, and then Ali is not equals to the second either, until, well, what we need from this is this. So the final result is welcome Ali, please update pin. So when it compares, so what it's doing, let me just explain what happened here. What it was doing was it was comparing this name, player's name, with every name in the loop. Okay, so it checked Ali and then it compared the first name. Okay, the first name, Ali equals to Michael. No, so it does not recognize. All right, Ali equals to Veronica. No, it doesn't. Then it went to the third name, Ali equals to Ali. All right, cool. Ali is registered, but Ali's pin is not updated. So he told Ali, welcome Ali, please update pin. So let's say we change the name, okay, to like Precious. Okay, Precious, and then we use Precious's actual pin, so 0977. Okay, and then go. It would go through all of the systems. Okay, as you can see, it went through everything. The first few names did not verify. it did not recognize the name. Like it didn't when it was comparing the names, it didn't get the name properly. Like it didn't the names did not match until it eventually matched the user, which is Precious, and then verified her PIN. Now let's use someone that's not even registered at all. Let's use let's say Bietunde, I guess, and then a very crazy PIN. Let's say 53. So Yetunde does not belong to the system, but she's trying to access it, and then you can guess the result this is going to give. It's going to go all straight down and not recognize the user at all. In all cases, it doesn't recognize the user. And then this user does not get access to the system at all. Okay, at least for the first two, it grants them access. Okay, eventually it checks. I don't seem to recognize this user. Let me try again. Okay, let me try again. Oh, this is this user. Okay, but this user doesn't have his PIN updated. All right, and then it does the same thing for Precious. First try, it doesn't see Precious. Second try, it doesn't see Precious. Third try, it doesn't see Precious. Fourth, it doesn't see Precious. And then finally on the fifth try, oh, there we go, that's Precious. And let's check her PIN. Oh yeah, her PIN has been updated and verified. And then it verifies Precious, and Precious accesses the system. Then it tries for Yetunde. The first try, it doesn't see Yetunde in the system. Second try, it doesn't recognize Yetunde as part of the system. Third, Yetunde is still not here. Fourth, I still can't recognize Yetunde. Fifth, this is the last person and I still can't find you today. Sorry, you don't have access to this system. The system does not recognize you in any instance at all. So that is basically what I am trying to, get us to understand how these kind of database system works when you're checking through if statements, loops, array, and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, this is where we're going to be stopping for today, and then where we're going to pick up from on Saturday. Okay, we're going to start. I'm going to give an elaborate explanation as to what all of these mean and how they all work, how arrays work, how you can use for loops, and all of that in general. Okay, so yeah, that is today's class. I hope I was able to carry everybody along and nobody was too lost or too um left too much left behind. Okay. Mohammed, are you tired? Yeah, I guess that covers it up for today. Thank you guys so much for coming along. Thank you guys for sticking with the entire thing. I know we shot past 2 hours. It's like 2 hours 30 minutes, but we're going to be covering up the others from next week, and I will try to explain everything as much as I can within the space of 2 hours. There's still quite a bit to cover up, so I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what everything meant from start to finish. Okay, all right. So I think this is where I will stop for today. Have an amazing evening, guys, and happy Sunday. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you too.